What if the 3 million Nepalese living abroad, you know, aren't just sending grocery money home? What if they're actually this massive, completely untapped venture capital firm?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the 100 billion rupee gamble we're looking at today. The government is basically saying the global diaspora is the single most important key to saving the national economy.
Right. But asking the diaspora for major investments is one thing, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, delivering returns in a landscape that's currently plagued by diplomatic blunders, widening trade deficits, and literally like brawls in parliament. Well, something else entirely.
Welcome to the Nepali Diaspora Network Deep Dive. We are your premier source for news, views, and insights for Nepalese worldwide. Today, we're unpacking the latest Nepali Diaspora Digest, and this covers the week of May 30th to June 5th, 2026.
Yeah, and there is a lot to cover this week.
There really is. And, you know, whether you're a first-generation migrant navigating a new career, a student studying abroad, or someone who's just been away for decades, this deep dive is entirely about connecting the dots for you.
Right, bridging that gap between your life overseas and the, well, rapidly shifting realities back home in Nepal.
And those realities are shifting so fast right now. We've got an incredibly dense stack of developments to get through.
Yeah, we're breaking down a groundbreaking billion-dollar pitch aimed straight at your wallets, plus a very messy diplomatic unforced error by the prime minister.
Yeah, that one was rough. And we'll also touch on a solemn 25-year national anniversary that really puts Kathmandu's current political gridlock into perspective.
Yeah, it really does.
Let's jump right into this economic pitch, though, because the government's tone has completely changed.
Oh, a total 180?
Right. Because for years, politicians have called the diaspora the backbone of the economy. But in practice,
You get handed a non-resident Nepali or NRN card that's basically just a glorified souvenir.
exactly. It doesn't actually open any real doors.
Yep.
But this new fiscal year 2026-27 budget, which was presented under Prime Minister Balendra Shah, pronounced Kailendra, S-H-A-H, by the way, is trying something radically different.
It's a massive pivot. I mean, the government isn't just asking for remittances anymore. They are actively trying to court you as high-level investors.
Wow.
Yeah, the headline policy is a proposed annual 100 billion rupee diaspora bond.
Okay, for our listeners tracking this in dollars, that is roughly 740 million US dollars a year.
It's huge.
It is. But let's pause and actually explain the mechanism here.
Yeah.
Because what exactly is a diaspora bond? It's not a donation, right?
Right, it's definitely not charity. A diaspora bond is a formal government debt instrument.
So like a loan.
Exactly. Essentially, the Nepalese government is asking expatriates to lend them money for a fixed period. And in return, the government promises to pay you back your principal amount plus a guaranteed interest rate.
Got it. And what do they do with that money?
They want to channel that overseas capital directly into national infrastructure. So, building roads, energy grids, healthcare facilities, and export industries.
Okay, and alongside that, they're floating this remittance investment matching fund.
Yeah.
And giving NRNs a brand new, frankly, wild-sounding title.
Oh, yeah, the super organic investor.
Super organic investor. I mean,
It's quite the rebranding effort, isn't it?
it really is. But wait. I mean, they want 100 billion rupees from us. They're promising access to the secondary stock market and even offering a, what is it called, return to motherland after retirement scheme?
That's the one.
But why should anyone actually trust this? Because announcing a massive fund is the easy part.
Right.
Nepal has a very long history of setting up these ambitious financial vehicles that just vanish into bureaucracy.
Right.
Like, who is actually managing this safely?
That is the ultimate question, and you're completely right to be skeptical. But if we look at the data driving this policy shift, it comes from a recent study by the Nepal Policy Institute, or NPI,
Okay.
and they finally put hard numbers to a frustration that Nepalese abroad have felt for decades. Right now, there are roughly 3 million Nepalese living abroad.
Which is, what, about 10% of the domestic population?
Exactly, and the government has historically treated that entire population like temporary, unskilled labor.
Right, which is just a fatally outdated assumption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The NPI's data shows that 51% of Nepalese Americans aged 25 and over hold a bachelor's degree or higher.
Or wait, over half.
Over half. You're talking about a highly educated, deeply embedded global workforce, and with remittances now making up a staggering 25.3% of Nepal's total GDP.
Wow.
Yeah, the NPI is telling the government, look, start treating the diaspora as a monolith.
So they're actually proposing to scrap the whole NRN label entirely.
Yes, exactly. The NPI wants to replace it with a Nepalese abroad framework, and this would consist of 3 distinct tiers.
Okay, what are they?
Migrant workers, former citizens, and persons of Nepalese origin.
Interesting.
And mechanically, this makes perfect sense. I mean, a single blunt legal category cannot possibly serve the specific needs of, say, a tech executive in California, a second-generation student in London, and a migrant construction worker in the Gulf.
No, of course not. And that actually brings us to a really bitter irony here.
Yeah.
Because while Kathmandu is, rolling out the red carpet and inventing titles like super organic investor for white-collar expats, we have to look at how a massive chunk of that 25.3% GDP figure is actually earned.
Right. The human cost funding these budgets is just brutal.
It is a stark duality. The government is drafting retirement schemes for some, while others are facing systemic abuse.
Yeah, the rights group Fair Square just released a devastating report, which was covered by the Kathmandu Post, detailing the conditions for Nepalese workers employed by subcontractors for the Saudi state energy giant Aramco.
And we're talking about 23 distinct alleged labor violations here. The details are honestly harrowing.
It's really hard to read.
Nepalese workers are enduring 12 to 14-hour shifts, and sometimes stretching up to 19 hours.
19 hours.
19 hours. In temperatures exceeding 50 degrees Celsius.
Oh my.
And they are living in what the rights group explicitly classified as slum housing. But here's the statistic that really just stops you in your tracks. Compensation was paid out in only 1 out of 6 documented cases of injury or death.
1 out of 6. That's unacceptable. And we need to explain how a global giant like Aramco gets away with this.
Please do, because it doesn't make sense.
Well, it comes down to the mechanism of the subcontractor loophole, which is often tied to the broader kafala sponsorship system in the region.
Okay.
See, Aramco doesn't employ these workers directly. They have this massive web of over 10,000 supplier companies in Saudi Arabia.
So it's basically a legal firewall.
Exactly. The parent company uses these third-party suppliers to shield themselves from liability. The workers are legally bound to the small, often shady subcontractor.
Right.
So when a worker dies of heat stroke or gets severely injured, Aramco can just wash its hands of it and say, well, they don't work for us. In fact, Aramco didn't even respond to the rights group's request for comment.
It's just complete silence. And the worst part is, it isn't an isolated issue. The Digest also reported on 36 Nepalese workers employed by a company called Intertectra Qatar WLL.
Oh, right, the unpaid wages.
Yeah, they haven't been paid a single rupee for 8 months.
And their combined outstanding dues are topping 20.5 million rupees.
I mean, how does the government's shiny new slogan, once a Nepali, always a Nepali, hold up when 36 of their citizens are actively being robbed of 8 months of wages in a country that just hosted the World Cup, no less?
It's completely hypocritical.
Right. The government wants to issue a 100 billion rupee diaspora bond, but they can't even secure basic wage protections for the workers who are bleeding to build the Gulf.
It really forces you to ask whether the state's protective reach is extending anywhere near as fast as its financial grasp.
Well said.
And when you look at the scale of the financial grasp they're aiming for, the math gets even more complicated.
Yeah, let's talk about the budget that all of these remittances are supposedly going to fund.
Yep.
Because those unpaid workers in Qatar are the very people expected to prop up this new, wildly ambitious 2.124 trillion rupee national budget.
Which is just a massive number. The government is aiming for a 7% economic growth target, pushing the overall GDP to 7.4 trillion rupees.
Okay.
And they're also tinkering with taxes, raising the personal income tax exemption, and cutting the top marginal rate from 39% down to 29% to stimulate spending.
Okay, but this is where I really have to call out the magical thinking here.
Go for it.
Because in the exact same parliament session where they pitched this 7% growth, the government's own economic survey was tabled.
Right.
And that survey pegs the current fiscal year's growth at just 3.85%.
Barely half of their new target.
Exactly. It's like trying to win a drag race while towing a broken-down caravan of trade deficits.
Yeah.
The numbers feel like a marketing document, not a math equation.
That's a very apt analogy. And honestly, the math gets even worse when you look at that trade deficit, which just widened by 11.2% to top 1 trillion rupees.
Ouch.
Yeah. And this brings us to the great aha moment of the Nepalese economy, what economists call the remittance paradox.
Okay, break that down for us. What is the remittance paradox?
So we know remittances make up over 25% of the GDP. That's billions of dollars flowing into the country, right?
Right.
But what happens to that money? It doesn't go into factories or domestic manufacturing. It goes directly to households.
Okay.
And they use it to buy things like smartphones, motorcycles, televisions, and fuel.
Which are all imported.
Exactly. Almost all of those consumer goods are imported. So the foreign currency that migrant workers break their backs to send home immediately leaves the country again to pay foreign manufacturers.
Oh, wow. So it's a revolving door.
A total revolving door. The very mechanism keeping the economy afloat is actively widening that 1 trillion rupee trade deficit. You are bleeding capital back out of the country just as fast as you bring it in.
Which explains why they are so desperate to launch this diaspora matching fund to try and divert that cash from flat-screen TVs into local startups.
Exactly.
But, I mean, is there actually any domestic industry that can break this cycle?
There is one major bright spot in the budget, and that's hydropower.
Okay.
It is the absolute centerpiece of their strategy to create a functional export economy. The budget plans to add 1,040 megawatts of power this year.
That's significant.
Yeah, it's 670 from hydro and 370 from solar.
But generating the power is only half the battle, right? Like you have to actually move it.
Right, which is the hard part.
And that's why the budget is heavily prioritizing the Karnali Corridor national transmission line.
Exactly, because generating electricity doesn't do any good if it's trapped in the mountains. You need transmission lines to physically move that power to domestic cities, and more importantly, across the border to sell it to India.
Right.
But the biggest game changer mentioned is the 140 megawatt Tanahu project, which is finally nearing completion.
So why is Tanahu so critical compared to all the other dams?
Well, because it's a reservoir scheme.
What does that mean?
Nepal's great energy paradox is that almost all its current dams are run-of-the-river. So during the monsoon season, the rivers are raging and Nepal generates this massive surplus of electricity.
Which sounds great.
It does, but during the dry winter, water levels plummet and the country suddenly faces severe power scarcity.
I see.
Yeah, without a reservoir, you basically just watch the water and the profits wash away in the summer and you freeze in the winter.
So Tanahu acts like a giant battery.
Precisely. It's the first major reservoir scheme in over 35 years. It stores that monsoon runoff to guarantee a steady, year-round power supply.
That's huge.
It is. Wiring a giant battery like Tanahu into a grid that can actually export power to India is what transitions Nepal from having a nice talking point to having a self-sustaining economy.
But here's the catch. Executing a massive 2 trillion rupee budget, building cross-border transmission lines, and managing international energy sales, that all requires a highly functional, deeply serious political machine.
Yeah, it does.
And right now, Kathmandu's political engine is completely stalling out over unforced errors.
The domestic political landscape is an absolute mess right now, and it starts at the very top.
Yeah, let's talk about Prime Minister Balendra Shah. He's 35 years old. He came in as this outsider disruptor, and he just gave his first formal address to the federal parliament.
Yep.
And during this address, he casually stated that while India has encroached on Nepal's land, Nepal has also encroached on India's land, quote, in multiple places.
I mean, he didn't name any specific locations. He didn't offer a shred of evidence. It was just a casual aside.
And the room immediately exploded.
Oh, completely.
So why is that specific phrasing so dangerous?
Well, it's because of the legal mechanics of international borders, specifically the 1816 Shigali Treaty.
Okay.
That treaty is the literal legal bedrock defining Nepal's boundaries. Nepal is currently in a major historic border dispute with India over the territories of Kalapani, Lipulekh, Limpiathura, and Susta. Nepal's entire diplomatic and legal case rests on one fundamental pillar, that India is the sole occupying force violating that treaty.
Oh, so if the prime minister stands up in parliament and concedes mutual fault.
He inadvertently destroys his own country's legal leverage.
Wow.
Yeah. In international diplomacy, words on the parliamentary record matter immensely. By saying both sides are encroaching, he just handed New Delhi a massive diplomatic gift.
Right, because India's foreign ministry spokesperson immediately capitalized on it. They stepped up to reject any third-party role in mediating the dispute.
Meaning no United Nations, no international courts.
Exactly.
India can now just point to the Nepalese prime minister's own words and say, look, it's just a messy local dispute. We don't need international arbitration.
That is wild.
It forced Nepal's foreign ministry to spend the entire week in full damage control mode, frantically trying to clarify that he only meant like minor cross-border farming disputes in no man's land, not formal territorial claims.
This is the danger of electing a young disruptor, isn't it? He's learning in real time that when you are the prime minister, you can't just think out loud at a podium.
No, you really can't.
Every syllable is a geopolitical chess piece.
It's a harsh lesson, and what makes it worse is the optics of what was happening in Parliament immediately after this.
Oh, right.
While the foreign ministry is putting out diplomatic fires, the legislature itself descended into total chaos.
Yeah, opposition MP Basana Thapa was screaming to have the remarks struck from the record. The session got so utterly disorderly that the Speaker of the House, Dol Prasad Ariel, had to adjourn proceedings entirely.
They literally had to pause the nation's governance to form a probe panel.
Led by House of Representatives Secretary Prakash Adhikari, right?
Right, just to investigate the, quote, indecent and objectionable behavior of the lawmakers themselves.
Think about the message that sends.
It's terrible.
The government is asking the diaspora for a 100 billion rupee investment, while the parliament is shutting down to investigate its own bad manners. It feeds the exact cynicism that this post-election government promised to cure.
It deeply frustrates the electorate. I mean, when pressing public business like holding subcontractors accountable or fixing a trillion-rupee trade deficit takes a backseat to parliamentary theatrics, you lose the trust of the very investors you're trying to court.
Absolutely. And, it's incredibly easy to get completely bogged down in that political gridlock. But it's important to remember that even when Kathmandu's politics stall, there are profound cultural touchstones that unite the diaspora across the globe.
That's true.
Shared memories that transcend whoever happens to be yelling in Parliament today. And this week marked a very heavy one. The 25th anniversary of the Narayanhiti Palace Massacre.
Yeah, June 1st, 2001, a night that violently altered the trajectory of the nation. 9
members of the royal family, including King Balendra and Queen Aishwarya, were killed.
For older listeners tuning in, that night is a frozen, visceral memory. You know exactly where you were, what room you were standing in when the news broke over the radio or television.
Yeah, the official inquiry named Crown Prince Dipendra as the gunman, though the conspiracy theories and public doubts surrounding that night have never fully faded from the national consciousness.
But think about the implications of the passage of time here.
What do you mean?
Well, for the younger generation of the diaspora, this isn't a lived trauma, it's just a history lesson. It's the origin story of the chaotic republic they inherited.
That's a great point.
We are sitting here mourning the fall of a deeply revered ancient monarchy while currently being governed by a 35-year-old Republican prime minister who is fumbling basic diplomacy.
It is an incredible whiplash of national identity.
It really is. The Nepal of 2001 is completely unrecognizable from the Nepal of 2026. The national identity is evolving at breakneck speed.
Yeah.
And we see that evolution in a much more uplifting way in the cultural and sports arenas, too.
Yes. Let's talk about the Gorkhali Chelis. The women's national football team gave the diaspora an absolute heart attack of a match at the SAFF Women's Championship semifinal in Goa.
They played Bangladesh, and it was a heartbreaking result.
It really was. Yeah. They took the lead in the 23rd minute, an absolutely beautiful strike by Geeta Rana. And for long stretches of that game, they looked like the dominant side.
They played so well.
But Bangladesh managed to equalize right before the half and then scored a devastating last-gasp winner to end it 2-1.
Yeah, losing a knockout game in the final minutes is just a brutal feeling, but zoom out and look at what it signifies.
Exactly.
A Nepalese women's side taking the lead in a regional semifinal on foreign soil isn't a Cinderella story anymore. They are genuine, feared contenders who just fell one moment short. It's a huge point of pride.
Absolutely. And that cultural momentum is everywhere this week. The 23rd Kathmandu International Mountain Film Festival just wrapped up, showcasing 50 films from 29 countries.
Wow.
Yeah. And the second ever Summiteers Summit brought together and honored 176 climbers from around the globe. And the legendary folk rock band Nepal just played a massive milestone concert, their first ever show in Malaysia.
Making Kuala Lumpur the 58th international city on their touring map.
Incredible.
And it's worth noting, that map was built almost entirely by the passionate, grassroots support of diaspora crowds buying tickets and showing up.
It all circles back to you, the listener. The diaspora is the engine. Whether you're packing a stadium in Malaysia to hear Nepal, or your remittances are funding 25% of the national GDP.
Yep, it's all connected.
Now, before we wrap up, a quick but important notice for our listeners based in the UK. If you are settling in Britain, or maybe you're helping a family member who just arrived, you should definitely bookmark Balea.uk.
It's a great site.
It really is. It's a fantastic community-focused classifieds platform designed specifically for the UK Nepalese community. It's not some corporate giant. It's a genuinely helpful local resource.
Yeah, it's the perfect place to find job listings, hunt for housing, check out community events, or discover local Nepalese businesses to support.
Exactly. Go check out balaya.uk to stay connected with your local community.
And if you want to dig deeper into the mechanics of anything we discussed today, from the specifics of the diaspora bond to the fallout of the Sugali Treaty slip-up, head over to nepaldiaspora.net.
Yes.
You can read the full digest there and access a ton of great resources.
Please do. Read the digest, use the resources, and share this deep dive with your friends, your family, your group chats. Let's make sure our community stays informed.
Definitely.
So as we close out today, earlier we asked why the government is suddenly treating the diaspora like super organic investors instead of just a piggy bank.
And that pivot leaves you with a very provocative question to ponder.
What's that?
If the government is truly shifting its no taxation without representation, right? If your money is building the dams and funding the budgets, when does the diaspora finally start demanding the political voting rights to match their financial contributions?
Wow. Something to mull over until next time. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.